Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, I'm not sure where to go with this because I feel like I might, I might be being owned in the marketplace of ideas by the high school debate lord here. But like again, the fact remains that.
Did you just get mad because Keffels was demonstrably correct?
Yeah.
What? Hey everyone, so I gotta give a bit of background on this before we get started. So after we finished the last Lily Orchard video, I had gotten in my silly head to start asking Twitter about characteristics of people that have been, I think, derogatorily called in the past, woke scolds. Individuals who have a tendency to be more moralistic rather than try to be understanding with where people are at, and often come off as very condemning. Now, I don't like this term. Woke scold is never one me and Zena have liked very much. We also don't really like tenderqueer. That one feels also kind of derogatory. Yeah. I tend to like the notion of puritanical progressives, people who want to wield progressivism like a cudgel to try to get results that look good, but philosophically are actually not aligned with progressivism. That is usually through what seems like pseudo-authoritarian means. Now, when we talked about this, what we ended up doing was posting this to Twitter. This was on my personal Twitter, and basically asking the question, hey, what do you think are the traits of this? And we had a lot of cool people show up, a lot of people that I genuinely just think are good people. And one person who had been following us for a while was a content creator by the name of Polly People. Polly People is a trans creator on Twitch who is part of the sort of politics drama / debate scene. And I had very little up until the last couple months familiarity with her. I basically didn't know who the hell she was. Where I first became aware about her was actually from her debate with Lonerbox. When Lonerbox decided to, let's say, put his damn foot in his mouth and essentially argue that there wasn't a trans genocide happening. Now, we'll be very clear. Our argument here is that trans genocide by its nature requires you to A, look at the definition of genocide, B, look at how genocides happen, and C, open your fucking eyes. Right?
Yep. You can just go to Wikipedia, by the way, and just look up the definition. You don't even have to do anything hard.
This is a non-debatable thing. Right? And so we'll be talking about this more later when we talk about the Arkansas bill. But the reality is that Polly was absolutely 100% correct in that argument. Not the best arguments necessarily. They were a little floppy, but overall solid. I agreed with her tendencies. So I ended up sharing her video. She ended up following me. Well, what ended up happening is that when I posted this thing about trying to figure out what this thing everyone was pointing at, because there's this fake divide in the left where we talk about some people as being real leftists and dirtbag leftists. And a lot of times the people who are coded as dirtbag often are seeing this phenomenon where people are very puritanical, which kind of goes in opposite to progressive values. When I mentioned this, Polly came out swinging and started immediately posting there saying, this is basically just calling me a reactionary. I can try to find the thread again, but I think we blocked each other, so I don't really know how much you can see. But, essentially, she came out with this really, really nonsensical argument, essentially saying anyone that would use that term is immediately a reactionary, and ignored any of the other context that I had. It was actually really, really sad. And I'd already been kind of knocked down a peg on her because of her debate with President Sunday, which just seemed like her being antagonistic and was sort of proven to be antagonistic because shortly after that started sort of over following him and watching all of his stuff on her stream for like 5 days, to the point where I think he had to block her on everything and actually tell his community, don't mess with her, don't leave her alone. She's still an ally, but we're not going to deal with her in any way, which I think was the mature and right thing to do.
That being said, don't feel like anyone needs to go find those tweets or anything. The important part more is the memory of it at this point.
Yeah.
We don't really need to go dig it up again, and certainly leave Polly alone. Don't go being a butt to her just because of what we're saying.
Yeah. No harass Marino. None of that. So when we're talking about this stuff, what we're kind of talking about is the fact that there seems to be a particular way that Polly argues that is effective in some cases against people that are demonstrably wrong, and then other people where it seems like it kind of falls really, really short. We get along with President Sunday, at least I do on Twitter. I know that he's watched our stuff before, as far as like the video we did about Sonsel.
Not to mean that I don't get along with President Sunday.
No. Just say that ZZ hasn't had any direct interactions. It's all been like...
Poppy's usually the Twitter person, okay? I'm cool with President Sunday, okay? We're good.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Now that you guys had that thing, after we had this little blowout argument, we blocked each other because I was kind of just done with her shit. And apparently Sage, one of our partner actually, ended up kind of going hard on her and getting her to back into a corner about the fact that, like, she just came out swinging on someone she didn't even know. Well, funny story, that person was me. And generally, when I have a content creator just go off the rails, because I try to be genuinely nice to everybody, when someone just goes off the damn rails, I'll either argue or I'll block. I don't have time for it. And especially with people who are just seeking that moralistic high ground to try to be better than other people. It's a power move, right? It's an authoritarian move. It is the attempt to be right for the sake of being right, not be right because it's true and good. Here's where we're at. As you saw from our video about masculinity, specifically around Finster and Vosh, and these two separate things, which actually were the same picture, as we said in our video, the reality is that this actually was talked about in multiple places. And one of the people that was railing on the other side of that debate, claiming that Finster was being a trap, excuse the use of the slur, but that's what was said, a trap, or saying that that Finster was somehow like making money off the trans experience without being trans. This is utterly nonsensical. This is just controlling men and their gender, presentation in our minds. This is an attempt to do this. And again, it's no different than, say, a drag queen or a trans girl sex worker who uses the same stuff. I mean, for fuck's sakes, Trappy Chan is a non-binary person whose name is literally Trappy Chan and presents femme. What are we doing? So, and we also talked about in that video the idea that our definition of trans has two different layers. The first one being is the individual layer. There are people who identify as transgender on an individual level. And then there's what we would consider the gender nonconforming or transgender umbrella. Mm-hmm. And this fits everyone from trans women, trans femmes, trans masc, trans men, non-binary people, xenogender people, gender nonconforming people. That last one's really important because that's literally what Finn is, gender nonconforming. Which means in our vocabulary, from a political movement, from a group perspective, Finn is one of us. That doesn't make Finn a trans woman or a trans femme, but gender nonconforming still is part of the umbrella. Always has been.
Absolutely. Any person who isn't fitting in like the binary social convention that gets assigned to you because of your gender at birth assignment, anyone who's fitting outside of that still needs the same options and opportunities as far as, legal, medical, social, or, therapeutic opportunities that all the other trans people have, right? Be that clothing, playing with pronouns, or potentially like medical interventions, counselors that know what they're on about and are going to be supportive of your identity. So that's kind of why when we talk over in the big lens, and we're looking at it like a policy thing from the greater leftist sphere, that's why we include everybody. Because we want to include as many people as possible so we don't end up with cases where people aren't able to express themselves and aren't able to be the best, version of themselves that they can be.
Yeah, one of our values that we hold to on this channel is the idea of inclusivity. Unless someone's acting demonstrably in bad faith, the reality is that anyone who's queer, you come in and you tell me what your identity is, I'm going to believe you. There's no reason for me not to. This is such a minor thing to do. And while I do have my own biases and reservations, generally anytime I've had a question in my mind about a particular group of people, whether it be xenogender people at one point in my life or plural people at one point in my life, my genuine value towards inclusivity has always been to sit down, shut up, try to understand it, argue where I think things make no sense, and try to be as inclusive to those people as humanly possible. To me, and I think Zena as well, how Finn, as we said in that video, identifies does not fucking matter. Because we're not talking about
a personal identity. We're talking about the large, overarching stuff.
So to me, that's a really important thing. So, as we said, that's the history of poly people with us. And also, one of the people that Polly talked to was Finn. Haven't watched that video yet. Probably won't, because I don't think I can stand 2 hours. But my understanding is that it ended somewhat amicably. Though I've heard some reports from it, and again, these are based on secondhand information, but that there was a lot of sort of berating Finn, which I'm not a huge fan of. So what we're going to look at is what happened before that, which is, if I remember the order of operations, dear Keffels, decided to have a stream where she spoke to, I think it was Finn and Faye, the people that were mainly part of that original discourse. And apparently it ended on a really positive note. It was really solid. You can go see Keffel's video. You know, the trans community has forgiven or has accepted Finster. I forget what the title is, whichever hyperbolic title that she used. But during this whole debacle, Keffel's had a discussion with poly people, and we wanted to watch it on stream with you guys because, we're going to be watching this on 1.5 speed because it's a 30-minute video and we want to try to get through it quickly.
Yeah. If you want our past take, we did do a video talking about Finster stuff and also the discourse about men going on right now. So did that one come out yet, or is
that's been the one that's like at 7.2 right now?
Oh yeah. Okay, so that one is out. Please go back and watch that. It will fill in a lot of the stuff we're talking about here. I have noticed, I think a little bit with chat as far as words. If something's like a really direct derogatory slur, the N-word example, all right, or the F slur, we don't like using those. But if we're just talking academically about or exploratorily, like about different concepts or different themes, it is okay to use the word. All right, we're not like in a school setting where we're having a legit discussion. It's okay to say whatever words, and that way we can actually identify them. And actually kind of get at the conversation without having to like tiptoe around it.
Well, and I also think it depends on the word, right?
Absolutely.
So like, you get into this thing where like, and Zena and I have talked about this, where not all slurs are created equal. Some slurs are very clearly not really, they don't really have a use except maybe in specific context by that group of people towards that group of people. Like the obvious example would be the N-word and black people. But like, for example, trap, for example, for the trans community is a slur when aimed at trans people, but by its nature, is that term a slur in and of itself? Well, it's complicated because, again, if we're talking about the idea in anime of men dressing up as women and being a big surprise, this is a trope that exists there. And you can say that trope is transphobic. I would tend to agree, but it's one of those things where, like, we have to realize that there are differences between these words and their context usage.
Well, and we also use that word if we're talking about, like, sex work, for example, which we do talk about on this channel. So it wouldn't really make sense to just omit the word if that's what we're dealing with that day in chat.
Welcome, Commune Cat.
Thank you.
By the way, Moonspirit, subscribe for a tier 1 sub. Thank you so much for your live streams and content you do. Elaborating the way that you do helps me better understand what you're talking about at times. Awesome.
Thank you, yeah.
So why don't we get into this? We'll watch this. Again, it's going to be on 1.5. If that feels too fast, let me know.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing, too, is just sometimes it depends on the social context of the group as well for what words we're using freely and what ones we aren't. So
yeah,
we try to be nice as far as, people coming in new to a situation as well.
No, absolutely.
All right,
let's
go.
Let's get into this. We'll pause this occasionally when we have thoughts. Go.
I mean, trans people do not own the word trout. That's not true. Well, right, but like white people don't own the N-word, but that doesn't. What the fuck does that have to do with what we're talking about? Hello. Hello. Thank you for reaching out to me. Let me get this open here. Okay, hi, can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh yeah, the Wiggler's adorable.
I believe this is the first time we've chatted, and so thank you for considering chatting with me. Oh, I figured I figured you deserved at least a conversation on it. This topic seems to really.
Okay, so real quick, I just want to say, considering talking with me, I'm not trying to be like overly like nitpicky, but I read that as bad faith. Now, I could be full of shit on this one. The two people talking are Keffels and Polly People, two trans women on opposite sides of the Finster debate. And yes, Keffels looks amazing in that. Much booba. But the thing is that the reason I read that is what this reminds me of in regards to openings for conversations is the Vosh Professor Flowers debate, where Professor Flowers comes out swinging, saying something to the effect of, you get brownie points for every, good thing you do, which was really, really crappy.
So is it like the implication of like the considering part that you're getting at?
It feels like a backhanded way to kind of talk about Keffel's, like, I guess you want to call it fame or notoriety, depending on who you're asking. It just feels like a, I don't know, maybe I'm overreading it, but it does have that vague feel of like, thank you for coming down from your throne.
Yeah, I think if the phrasing had been just thanks for having me on to talk. Also, because the verbiage actually isn't accurate for the situation anyways, right? The decision to talk on stream has already been made and already done, because clearly they're here talking, right? They as in them as in both of them. So the consideration part does feel a little weird. But otherwise, like, normally we would have just gone, hey, thanks for having me on right now. I'm glad we are able to have a chance to talk, right? Like,
yeah.
There's no ambiguity of, oh, did you just decide or not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. In Common Cat, we'll get to that. I think that's a solid point. We will get to that. Let's go.
Upset you? Oh, I would say that, well, okay. Here's the most upsetting thing about it is not necessarily the topic itself. Well, the topic itself is upsetting enough. It's the sort of the well poisoning, the sort of straw manning and dismissing of the very real critiques, I think, of Finn's content that have made it difficult. Like I've sort of resigned myself to people sort of responding to me saying you're just jealous, Polly, or now you're trying to control what people wear. You're basically a TERF. So like that's been it's come from trans people, and I know. I have to guess that that's been the result of some of the, not just you, but other content creators sort of not taking the critique seriously and being dismissive of them. So what's the critique, in your opinion?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah,
okay.
So if I could sort of briefly describe it, when you create content and you lean heavily into tropes such as like I'm a trap, if you've built your entire existence on the hey, I'm actually a man, lol, but I look just like a woman, and I've you're gay because you like me. So real quick, I want to make this very clear. We've already watched this, so I want to be really clear up front. This is already where this argument has gone absolutely tits up. Because it is predicated on an if-then statement. Mm-hmm. For anyone who's done basic logic, this is the point where the train started like literally rocking back and forth.
Well, and if we get into logical fallacies, if your if statement, even at the start, isn't accurate, you kind of set the whole thing up for failure.
Well, it kind of turns into like a red herring. I forget the other name for that for the other fallacy, but yeah, it's.
Maybe we'll bring up the
list of fallacies.
The video, or I'm sorry, the picture list of fallacies.
Yeah, we'll have to go over fallacies. We should talk about them as just a separate segment. But anyway, the point being is,
y'all are welcome to just Google it and pull up a picture,
please. But like, to me, the way this reads as is essentially it's based on an if-then statement. The if-then statement being if you engage in tropes such as trap content. But the problem being is that, at least thus far, there isn't actually a statement about being trans. It's just a statement about if you lean into this type of content. But again, as we're going to show...
Well, and the other part as well is basing your entire identity off of that. Right? That was also built into her statement, which if you base your entire identity, you're probably going to have an issue if that's the only identity that you have, but that's not really how people work. Just saying. Yeah.
Yeah, basically my short version before Zena spoke up is that the problem I have with this is that it is based on an if-then statement that is not actually leading. Nowhere in Finn's content do you ever see anything trap-related. And I believe Keffels will say as much in a moment.
Or, I fooled you. your entire presentation is, on the surface, completely indistinguishable from a trans woman's experience. I mean, I thought he was a trans woman. That's why I sort of let it slide, right? Because
I feel like if you.
But again, the notice that if you're a trans woman, you can let it slide. That feels like a really weird, like, double standard.
Well, and Poppy and I tend to have issues when double standards are set up. Well, if you are part of this group, then you can do X. There are some cases we talked about the use of slurs a little bit ago. But generally, as far as like overall behavior, when we start setting this up, like, and we have different rules of behavior for different groups, we kind of start repeating patriarchy and the worst parts of like,
or at least unhealthy hierarchies
or toxic sexism, right? Like the hey, you know what, this femboy cannot do the same thing that a trans woman could. Well, wait a minute. What happens when somebody is, exploring their gender and going from, one to the other, and they're making a few stops along the way because they're just trying to figure things out? Well, you kind of made the person kind of get stuck now because you said, no, you're not allowed to do this. And it doesn't really make sense to put those rules in there.
Nope, absolutely. Also, Gene K, you would ask, what is trap content? As in, how do we know when someone's trying to? What I would say is trap content is described as content in which someone is emphasizing the notion that they are usually a feminine presenting person who has a penis. This is to emulate sort of the anime trope of traps where you have a very effeminate, often very Lolita-based dressed character who often is packing, so to speak. And the thing is that there are trans women that lean into that content as sex workers. I mentioned Trappy Chan earlier, who's, I believe, non-binary, but there's also there's a ton of different sex workers who lean into this idea of playing up that this is them being, I don't want to say abnormal, but it's playing up the taboo of it. And the thing is that content in and of itself is not necessarily a problem because that's how that person's making money. Survival sex work, a thing a lot of trans women have to do.
And particularly, this is a word that relates to things that we see in media of some kind. It's not something that we use for like real life people. Okay, like if you dress a certain way and you have those parts, cool, that's just you, that's just your body. You are not obligated to go tell everyone what your genitals are. Like, that's just silly, all right? That's not okay. So this is really something that we just see in media, okay? Because we, especially in anime and manga communities, there are 50 bajillion different tags. We tend to tag works with different things that they contain, all right? And same thing with sex work. They will tag works for what possible themes could come up or what people are interested in as well. So think media for this.
Yeah, well, Neo Rip Shaft in YouTube chat said, you make it sound as though she should have actually resolved the if statement prior to asserting the conclusion. If you like kicking puppies, then that would be bad. Why check if they kick puppies? Well, because why are you bringing it up otherwise? It's a non sequitur or a red herring at that point. So, like, I get your point is like, yeah, people, if you're doing an if then you're sort of making a prescriptive statement. But the thing is that the prescriptive statement either hangs in the air as meaningless unless you're presuming immediately that the person in question, in this case Finn, is doing the thing. Essentially, if we want to use your language, we've already assumed before then that Finn has kicked a puppy, so the if then statement seems appropriate without that.
Conservatives like to use this for trans people all the time.
You're being facetious. It's obviously spectacularly irresponsible. Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
100%.
okay. All right. Because I was like...
Oh, thank God.
I was going to start coming up with examples from past streams of how we've dealt with this. Because conservatives have done this a lot, too.
I was so confused. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, as a facetious thing, no, absolutely. Like, okay. Why prove my statement? It's just, that should just be acceptable.
I love you guys. But, so /s is the same as /. My brain reads it both as serious and satire, and I'm like, wait a minute, those are both
or
S's.
Sarcasm,
or sarcasm, and I'm like, brain, write out the whole word because my brain doesn't work the same.
Yeah, for the neurodiversion, if you'd write out the thing, we'd appreciate it. Moving on, let's go.
Like if you did, okay, why would I hold on? Like already you haven't done even the most.
Absolutely,
I am, but like immediately you're already saying you weren't even familiar with who Finn was or Finn's content before jumping to that conclusion.
Correct.
Well, no, because I've familiarized myself with it. Like I'm not just popping off here. What I'm trying to describe to you is I can understand why people might not quite pick up what I'm putting down here, because you sort of look at the content at first glance. You're like, this is just a trans woman being trans, right? Being edgy. But when you look deeper into it and you become more familiar with his history, his entire platform is built off of transphobic shit. And so that is, you can tell me
How is Finn's entire platform built on transphobia?
Well, his entire thing is trap content, like fooling people into saying, look, you're gay for liking me. I'm actually a woman, lol, I fooled you, sort of stuff. Like, how does the trans community not take strays from that? And how is it okay for him to lean into those kind of tropes when he doesn't pay the price for it?
I mean, objectively.
And I think Keffels is going to argue this in a moment, but like, no, he does take that for it. Like, gender nonconforming men get shit all the time. I guarantee you in Finn's chat, there are people that probably lash out and like literally don't even know who Finn is, but just come out swinging, saying shit like, you'll never be a woman. Like, you're telling me that Finn doesn't get this. Also, the idea that like pay the price for it has a really weird like stolen valor feel to it also. And then she'll keep making this comment throughout this about like catching strays. She's referring to catching stray bullets. It's the idea that there's collateral damage.
As someone who identifies as a cis man, if a straight man thinks that they're attracted to Finn, they're gay.
Do you understand that just saying it like that in such a bald sort of way in isolation? Don't you see that why that enables trans folks to say that we're like not real, or that we're actually traps?
No, like I feel like they're gonna do this.
Oh, hi, Keffels. Welcome to our chat.
Oh, hi, yeah.
Holy crap. Yeah, we should talk sometime. I want to keep going over this because it's important to me, but I definitely would love to talk sometime. That'd be rad.
That would be super fun.
Yeah, so I get where you were going with this argument. I think
my question, do you want to go or do you want me to? Because I'd raised this question, I think, when we were talking the other night.
No, you raised it, and then other people in our VC chat also brought it up. Yeah, so if the idea is someone looks at Finn and they're a straight man, they're like a they're a man, and they look at Finn. If they're attracted to Finn because of the persona that Finn is putting on, then I would argue by definition that they are, that person would be engaging in a straight action. Now, if they're attracted to Finn without all the stuff on, just, masculinity, that would be fine. Yeah, grats to Keffels for surviving this. Yeah, this is my personal, just hit me up there. It's easier to get to that one than it is than our channel specific one.
The thing that we were curious about was, did you have more, Love?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay.
Go, please.
Was just, it seemed like this particular one, we weren't sure if that was like the full argument or if this was just a moment where you didn't have a whole lot of time to like flesh out everything, so it was kind of shorthanded. Because in general, like in the shorthand, it makes sense. But I think that was really kind of the only question that we had as far as the arguments.
Well, and it seemed like it came out. I just saw it's my. Yeah. No, that'd be rad. I gotta go, but I'm willing to come on. I'll hit up in DMs. Awesome, thank you, Keffels.
Yeah, sounds good.
Welcome, by the way. Thank you so much. Remind me to give Keffels the VIP.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do that. Holy crap! Special appearance by Keffels. Might have to drop the other segments today if we.
That might actually be the way to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about it after. Let's go.
Regardless. Because Finn is a man. Okay. Finn's always identified as a man.
Okay, but like transphobes don't care about that, and people who are not who are not. Well, I guess, super in tune with trans issues are not going to think there's a dime's worth of difference between Finn saying, haha, I fooled you, look, I'm just a man who looks every bit as much as a woman, and some other actually trans content creator that does the same thing or would do the same thing, except the harm that comes from that falls solely on the trans community or largely unfairly on the trans community, which is a much more marginalized community.
I really do not understand how you're coming to the conclusion that Finn increases the amount of transphobia in the world.
Pause here. I really take issue with the point that Polly's going after, where like the harm from this falls solely on the trans community, because it doesn't. We actually, one of the big places where I see the harm, where people assume that men or boys, having a more feminine appearance of some kind is bad, is particularly like grade school boys.
Thank you, Keffels.
Thank you. So especially with grade school boys, like let's say a boy wants to wear nail polish or dye their hair or have the My Little Pony backpack. Like, what do you do then, right? Like, these kids get lots and lots of shit all across the internet and other places too. And their dads, I love seeing the post with the dads where the dads are like, you know what? No, I'm going to go paint my nails with my son too. Right? Or mom's like, hey, I paint daddy's nails for him. I could paint yours too. Like, this is just a family thing now with painting and art, and that's super based. So this is just another example of no, everybody gets affected when this stuff happens. And they don't always know where the little kids are going to go with their gender. They don't always know yet either. Sometimes they do, and they're solid, and sometimes they don't. But
yeah, I also want to bring up something about this that stands out to me too, is that we talked about this in our discussion about offense versus harm. For those who haven't seen that, watch that series. That'll explain it better. The short version is that our argument is that the left tends to over accentuate the notion of harm. That is, everything that is done is harm, but everything that is for the right, everything is offense. So basically, the right pretends that nothing ever does real harm, and the left has a tendency to kind of overly sometimes cry wolf on things. Now, I know that's not a comfortable feel, but this discourse feels like that. It feels like a number of trans women took offense to Finn's presentation and monetization.
Absolutely.
But every time they come out saying this does harm, nobody can show me on the doll where Finn is doing harm. Yeah, I don't think Polly acknowledged that Keffels rejected Polly's basic premises. Yeah, no, absolutely. And Polly didn't correct establishing her premises at all. Well, because I think that they're immediately coming out as in two very different corners. And again, I don't think Polly's very good at debating. But
yeah. Also, hi, Beyond Safe Words.
Hi.
She's our other streaming buddy. So she's got a whole playlist on our channel, and her stuff is super cool too.
So if you lean into any trope, like if you lean into sort of, I mean, I hate to like use this as a crude example, but if you make sort of racist jokes that are obviously racist in a way to sort of strawman like racism, you're going to have racial minorities taking strays and being harmed by that. Like the furthering of tropes. Like are you saying I need to prove to you that the furthering of transphobic tropes hurts the trans community? Like that's not a given to you?
So would you equally take offense when trans women who are doing sex work play into these tropes on incredibly large platforms because they know that it sells?
Finn is not
No,
trans.
it's not a
Finn is
given.
cis.
Okay,
trans
so you're saying that
trans women are doing that, and they are doing it one because they have to. They live in a transphobic society. They're doing the best they can, and it's to say those two things are the same blows my mind.
No, because if you're making this argument.
Okay, real quick, I gotta say this. Where I think Polly's not, I think actually Polly's actually incredibly incorrect here. There are trans women that do this because they have to, but that's not every trans woman who uses the whole trap content thing on Twitter. There are massive content creators who are on Fansly or on OnlyFans who do this because it sells. Now, you can argue that there are systemic forces that cause that to be a thing, and there's definitely transphobia in there somewhere, but like, the problem is that like, Polly essentially came down to it is it's like okay for me but not for thee. Like, because if a trans woman does it, then it must be because she has to. But if Finn does it, it's a bad thing. Except for, again, I believe Polly's pronouns are she, her. If I'm wrong on that, I apologize, but I believe they're she, her. But yeah, this idea that like, because Finn doesn't identify as trans individually, that then Finn can't use this. Well, first off, Finn doesn't do trap content. There's nothing I've looked through the Twitter. There's nothing that does does trap content, does Finn content, not trap content. But the thing is that like, even if we assume that he did, I don't know if that's enough to necessarily go against, because there are examples of non-binary content creators who do this as well. But Polly's recognition, if you're a trans woman, it's okay. But what would she say to people like Trappy Chan or other people who are non-binary? Why is that a problem? Like, this is why I don't like this like gatekeeping thing of like, what? I mean, what about femboys that do this content? There's like, it's just a bad argument. Anyway,
the other thing too is Polly over here is comparing it to race, and the thing that I think of is, okay, but Polly, there is a massive difference between things like minstrel shows and like Dave Chappelle, like doing satire and humor. All right, those are massively different. The people doing it have massively different intents, right? And there is a way in which, okay, if we're participating in problematic content, that creators can choose how to engage in that or how to move that in a direction, right? Like, let's say you have a sex worker who's leaning into these tropes. Okay, how they engage in it, and you know what, maybe there are ways that they can help educate or use that, to make it less of a slur, less of a thing, right? Individuals kind of have to balance that line all the time, but no, the entire premise that it's somehow a given, right, that this is always bad is not a given. In fact, we have endless debates and discussions and academic papers on every piece of literature out there, all right, of whether it's good or bad or doing X, Y, and Z. This is a hotly debated thing. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, when someone comes into our site chat and just comes out swinging, being really weird, I'm just going to mute them. I'm sorry. When someone comes out and is like, it's disgusting to see true trans creators defend a cis person, I'll defend any gender nonconforming person I want. Like, Beyond Safe Words has an incredible point here on stream. You can see it up here in the chat, or did for a moment. It said, she also doesn't accept that trans women aren't the only marginalized folks who are impacted by gender essentialist and transphobic rhetoric. True.
Absolutely true. Yeah. Beyond Safe Words, make a new Discord or send us a DM on Twitter or something, by the way.
Yeah. And again, if you want to talk to us at some point, like, we don't do debates. So, like, if you want to talk to us, that's fine. Just please, like, actually go through proper channels, either through our email or like other things. Just coming out like swinging on our chat is going to be a good way for a mod to just like mute you or boop you. Like, it just please like actually behave like an adult.
You're gonna pretend like there's not a difference between those two things?
All right.
No, but I feel like if you're making this argument, it would actually be more harmful for trans people to do it because they're more representative of the trans community than Finn ever will be or is.
The average person who's gonna be willing to go along with transphobic tropes are transphobic people. Are you kidding me? So, like, it doesn't matter to the average transphobe whether...
Can I just say real quick, I'm sorry we keep interrupting, but also, like... Oh, yeah, Otto Ganamalius says it right. Like, here, also there are sex workers who are trans and cis alike who do this because they like it. I resent the puritanical implication that I feel like a lot of people make that sex work is only acceptable if you have no other options. Fucking true. Some people just like fucking.
Absolutely. And also, I really do think it's okay to engage with taboo topics.
Yeah, as long as it's safe and it's everyone's consensual, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like, but also, like, this whole thing of, like... Polly's argument here is really strange because it's based on this notion of... I had it and I lost it. The thought was there, and then I saw the chat, and then my brain...
I think she was just talking about how, like, conservatives and other people hate us no matter what.
She keeps doing this appeal to, like, the power group.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Our take is conservatives will probably hate you no matter what if they perceive that there is a reason to, right?
Yeah, like, that's a really weird, like, thing, is, like, they keep doing the appeal, like... If you're talking about conservatives or you're talking about people who are transphobic already, like, yeah, the goal would be to try to pull some of those over, but we shouldn't have to sacrifice parts of ourselves to do that.
Yeah.
This feels like a really weird thing of, like, why do we keep appealing to this average man kind of thing? Like, it feels really strange. Like, to the average, I'm going to be really clear, to the average conservative or Nazi, let's be clear, we're all degenerates. They don't care if you're gay or trans, gender nonconforming. None of these distinctions matter to our enemies.
Blue-haired.
Yeah, or blue-haired. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have blue hair and pronouns.
Right.
But
It's
yeah.
I was just saying, it's one thing if we're like making a tactical call of like, hey, you know what? I want to try and like influence my community to be more accepting, so I'm gonna, do an event of like family-friendly pride. Cool. All right. You know what? We're making a decision there. But in just our day-to-day lives, or like Finn's got his own platform on the internet. Cool. Like, Finn can do that.
Neo Rip Chef said in YouTube chat, the offense versus harm paradigm here is pretty illustrative since there's a complete absence of harm being presented, even if we were to accept every premise except for the bald assertion of harm. Yeah. If we accept every premise but except for the harm because it's not being demonstrated, you're not showing me in any way there's systemic harm from this, you're asserting that there is and just vaguely pointing at it, then yeah, by definition, what we're talking about is it's offense. The person in chat that was really upset about two trans people talking about this, yeah, it's because you're assuming that we should go along with your moralizing statement, but the reality is that, like, again, you guys are getting mad because you're offended. If you can actually demonstrate to me the harm, like I think the person in chat said something to the effect of like the transpanic defense. But the thing is that how does Finn lead to the transpanic defense? The transpanic defense leads to guys who are transphobic getting upset that they are about to or do sleep with a trans girl, and then they either beat the crap out of her or kill her. How does Finn's content lead to that when he's incredibly clear up front that he's a guy? The entire transpanic defense is based on the predication of being lied to.
And again, spoiler, you don't need to tell anybody what your genitals are, and it's stupid to think that people should have to do that.
Yeah. This is really strange. Now, do I think it's for safety's sake? If you're dating cis men and you're a trans woman, that you probably should let people know up front you're trans? Yeah, but that's not because of like you owe them something. It's a safety issue.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Commune Cat absolutely right with long hair and still getting told that I'll never be a real woman and you're a cis dude. Yeah. Right? For us, why don't we let this go for a little bit?
Yeah.
Because
if we
it was
stop...
like this when we listened to it the first time. We just had to stop constantly and rant. But also, we want to join Devils later. We might need to make it through this.
Finn's doing, or an actual trans woman doing it, it's not a time's worth of difference. But one person doing it receives none of the fucking fallout from furthering transphobic tropes, and the other person is doing it because they have to and faces all of the fallout anyway. The fact that you are making this argument shows me why you're not really thinking about this hard enough, and why I'm actually kind of disappointed in how you've engaged with this topic in its entirety. I thought you would at least be somewhat charitable to the obvious position here that like Finn doing something transphobic essentially is not the same.
Because I don't think that Finn is doing anything transphobic.
Okay, well,
I'm not convinced.
Would you deny that he's furthering transphobic tropes?
No, I actually think that Finn is doing good at presenting a role model for gender nonconforming men and is making the world a less transphobic place with their platform.
True.
Okay, so then if you don't think somebody saying, haha, I'm a trap, if your position is as a fucking cis man that the strays that are obviously going to be taken by the trans community, he's entitled to do that for whatever reason you're coming up with, then I don't.
Because it's just like this, people are unreachable on this. This argument just opens you up to such weird positions. That's the problem. Like, if you're going to make this exact argument, then why aren't you going after drag queens? It's like, oh, so you think being a woman is a performance? You think you can like dress up like a woman and do a show and dance? No, that's offensive to trans people.
Don't say I'm a trap. Like
what are you talking about? I have seen so many drag queens say I'm a trap.
Okay, but they're not like looking. The drag queen argument is so stupid because drag queens like go out of their way to not even look like cis women. They're like caricatures, for fuck's sake. It is an artistic endeavor. What Finn's doing is essentially saying I'm a trap and winking and nodding and looking exactly like a trans woman, but saying I'm not.
What do you mean by looking exactly like a trans woman? What does a trans woman look like exactly to you?
Well.
I love that question. We'll come back to this in a second, but I just had to mud this out. Otagai Amelia in chat said, ew, a trans woman. No, I'm a crossdresser. Oh, forgive me then, sir. Please proceed. Yeah, please then proceed unmolested. Yeah, it's again, like, it's the what was it? Natalie Wynn's thing in her gender critical video, right? It's for, trans women get called it or spit. Like, the idea that, like, because you're a crossdresser, well, that's totally fine. Like, please concede, proceed.
Okay, so I should say a transphobic caricature of a trans woman is somebody that says, ha, I trapped you, you're gay now, and is clearly like doing it to appeal to transphobic sensibilities. And what makes it problematic is because he is not trans and he doesn't suffer the consequences of those actions. Like, there's very good reason to critique his behavior on a fucking equitable sort of don't punch down sort of basis. Like, it seems relatively obvious to me that, like, if you are in a more privileged position, why is it acceptable for you to engage in behavior for clout and to grow your platform in ways that are obviously going to have fallout with people far more marginalized than you and far more subject to those same sort of transphobic attacks without even, asking for it. People call me a trap and I don't even have to do any trapperson type shit that he does.
Okay.
So he's making it easier for them to say, you're all traps anyway, you all look the same to me. This is an easy argument.
No, I don't think that. Like, I think that regardless if Finn does...
I guess that's, what do you... Okay, all right, I guess you don't think that, but that's not a response.
I was about to formulate my response.
All right, go ahead.
Like, as I said, I think that transphobia is going to be a thing regardless of whether or not Finn does what they're doing, which has very little to do with the trans community. Like, Finn's made it very clear, I'm not a trans person, I am just a crossdresser. Weirdly enough, one of your mods actually said, Finn isn't gender nonconforming, a crossdresser, or a femboy. He isn't doing this because he likes to dress this way. He doesn't dress this way unless it's for work. It's like, why is it that your community is trying to police a gender nonconforming person's expression?
Also, this is false because there are videos of the people that Finn lives with who are also streamers. There's a fucking adorable video of one of the streamers in his household literally watching as Finn comes down the stairs, walking down, twirling a pistol, like a fucking, I don't know if it's an airsoft gun or a real pistol, but just spinning a gun, wearing fucking thigh highs and a skirt. Like, no, this is just what Finn wears comfortably. Like, what? Like, oh, he just does it for work. What? Like, have you, again, she says she's looked into his content, but have you? Because I can do a base search and find just silly shit of Finn walking by and just being adorable.
Right.
Also, there is a difference between gender presentation and gender identity. There's a reason why when we look at like the gender unicorn or any of the other things that have been created to better explain these things.
The genderbread person.
Yeah.
There's both out there at this
Presentation does not equal gender. This is why you can have very butch lesbians, even ones who are microdosing tea, who are still women. This is why you can have femboys who are on microdosed levels of estrogen, or may even try to grow boobs, but are still femboys, because identity is not equal to parts. The problem being is that the problem is that if you follow Polly's argument, essentially what it turns into is that it's entirely based on identity. Presentation either means you're doing it right or you are in somehow doing harm. And again, it's always the stolen valor thing with trans women. And granted, I'm a trans woman. I get it. There's stuff out there that bothers me. I'm not super comfortable with the trap content that some trans women do. But I'm not going to tell them they can't. It's their fucking body. Like,
well, there's a difference between like, hey, this makes me uncomfy and I don't really want to be around it or look at it, versus making statements about what people can or cannot do. Beyonce Ford says, Polly doesn't point out examples or anything concrete about what these tropes are or what harms are being caused. With folks like Blair White, Calvin Guerra, Matt Walsh, there are concrete harms that you can identify, and real people who have experienced real harm. That's not the case with Finn.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we're manufacturing victims.
Well,
like hypothetical victims.
Yeah. This is where when we talk about argument, showing up with data is really, really important. And not data in like the, hey, you know what, I have 5 pictures and a 3-minute video. Okay, sometimes your data is your clear, concrete examples, you know, in your descriptions of it, right? This is why it's important for us to define terms as we go along. You know, having a good understanding of what these things mean in the first place is key to making a good argument. Pay attention in your English classes, okay? Please, trust me, it'll come in handy, all right?
Well, and again, it's almost as a transmedicalist argument with a purely psychological framework. Well, yeah, because it's entirely based on if you dress femme and you make money off of that, the entire thing in Polly's argument is that's predicated on whether you identify as a man or a woman, except for one, her argument leaves out non-binary people, and it ignores examples of femboys and drag queens who will engage in similar things. Yeah, like, so does Billy Porter rocking gowns on the red carpet perpetuate trap content too? Or what about Eddie Izzard before Eddie Izzard came out? Eddie Izzard literally performed as a cross-dresser. I believe the term is executive transvestite. Right? Like,
Onyx, this was not intentional, but thank you.
Yes,
it was brain melting.
Don't talk about my kinks. Moving on.
Why is that okay?
Well, I could go back to what I just said. What's not okay is furthering transphobic tropes as an edgy way.
You haven't
to grow your
demonstrated that.
platform.
So wait, you're just going to completely ignore that it's like your
What are
community.
you talking about? Are you trying me to answer for somebody what somebody said? I mean, fuck, do you want me to go through every
It's
dumb
your
fuck?
fucking
I mean,
mod.
that's
It's your
bad
mods.
necessarily.
You don't think it's a bad point. You think that it's like okay to.
You want me to answer for everything that everybody has said that you sort of said? Get the fuck out of here. Why don't you just
Wait, when did I say
Why
that?
don't-
I never said
why
that.
don't you engage with what I'm saying? Or I could explain to you why.
Also, this is utterly irresponsible. If one of my mods, like our mods, said anything that was like even remotely like in this direction, I would call them the hell out. You can ask them. I've had arguments with all of them.
Oh, yeah, no. This, when we're content streamers, we need to pick our mods carefully. Like, that is just a thing. Because, no, they do represent us. They are a lot of times the bridge between us and direct community members, right? There's more mods than just me and Poppy, all right? Especially if you're a single person streaming. No. Your mods do represent you. And as a group, you do have massive amounts of influence over how your community is. And, it makes me sick to hear this because, God, there's just no responsibility. And it just turns into, I'm not responsible for everyone. Yeah, to some degree, you're not. But also, you have a lot of influence in this situation.
Serial Cat, what Polly's mod said was that Finn is not transvestite or gender nonconforming or any other thing like that. He only wears this for work. It's entirely a grift. Like, essentially, they're making the argument that he's a grifter. But again, we've already given examples where that's just not the case. Like, it shows me these people don't know what they're actually talking about.
There was at least a mod being brought up in Keffel's example. So,
Yeah.
true.
No, absolutely.
Right. Let's go.
Why that statement on Twitter may actually have some merit, but it's going to have a more nuanced discussion. But we can't even get there when you are unable to accept that somebody who does transphobic tropes as a cis person has problematic content. Like, if we can't get there, then we're not even at stage one. Like you're just making yourself completely unable to understand.
Is a gender non-conforming person cis? Like, where are we drawing the line on what cis is?
Finn is not a trans woman.
Yes.
Finn is not going to be harmed by the furtherance, or at least will be far less harmed than trans people by the furtherance of transphobic tropes.
Okay.
I'd like a source on that.
That's the problem.
Okay, but does that make Finn cis? So like a non.
Okay, so I don't know why you're playing word games with me.
I'm not playing a word game.
Finn is not a trans person.
I never said this.
Not okay. Then what are you talking about then?
I'm asking you to define what cis is, because you're trying to use Finn as cis as a way to dismiss Finn.
Yeah, but he says he's cis. He says he's cis, and he puts up on his, and the way he proves he's cis is he pins on his Twitter or whatever. Here's my birth certificate, and I'm a man. Like one that has a two-prong effect. Is one, it says that I'm cis, but it also winks and nods to his trans audience. Look, I care about my assigned gender at birth just like you do. Like, I mean, like, you can't.
Haven't cross-dressers, transvestites, and various other people acknowledged that they identify as men but dressed in femme? Like, femboys are very clear that they're men but dressed in femme. Like, and you're telling me these these people are not hurt by transphobia? Like, this whole catching strays thing. Like, again, it.
Oh yeah.
Does Polly not believe in non-binary people?
Well, and gender non-conforming is absolutely included. We include that for a reason, but it doesn't have to mean that you don't have another personal identity.
Also, to some degree, there is this thing of dude, Natalie got canceled for less than this. Natalie basically said something that was understandable, and people got incredibly butthurt about it. This is literally this is saying you can't be hurt by trans misogyny or transphobia in the same kind of transphobia that hurts trans women unless you are a trans woman. My brother in Christ, what? I don't understand. This is, transphobia hurts everyone, and transmisogyny hurts anyone who is, again, we've talked about this on stream. Transmisogyny is misogyny, the hatred of women, and transness, the hatred of transness in regards to this. Specifically, the idea that built in there is that just like we believe that men are inherently sort of more likely to go to fascism or be predators or be child molesters, whatever, there's this underlying current within our society that men are inherently more predatory or bad. And while there is data to support that this tends to happen more so, that appears to be more because of sociological reasons, not because of some inborn essentialist nonsense. And the fact is that trope from masculinity gets copy pasted onto trans women. That's why they're always afraid of us in the bathrooms and all this other. It's why fucking autogynephilia exists, right? They can't understand why a AMAP person would want to be feminine without making it a kink, without making it a thing. This joke is older than Penelope and IR. Question, what's the difference between a crossdresser and a trans woman? Answer, about 6 months at a therapist letter. Any gender non-conforming cis person could turn out to be a trans person at any moment. Sophie was publicly accused of appropriating femininity a year before she came out as a trans woman. Gatekeeping is bad. Well, we talked about that on stream. That's what happened with Philosophy Tube. Philosophy Tube made a fantastic joke about the transition of power, i.e. Trump's transition. I wish her well in her journey. 2 months later, came out as trans woman. No, this is nonsense. This is nonsense. Let's keep going.
I mean, come on. Are we going to be stupid and let's just sort of let him have it both
No,
ways?
not being
Just
stupid.
because he's a large content creator.
No, I'm not being stupid. I think it's incredibly
I hate
offensive.
being dogpiled as much as the next person, right?
Right, but it's you're willing to, with your community and your mods, those are your mods who are just okay, I can police the behavior of gender non-conforming people. It's completely okay to do. And when I asked you about this, you just get angry and say, oh, you think I can police everything? You think that I can just control everything? But it's no, these are the people who moderate your community. You have a responsibility for that. They represent you.
Well, okay, but hold on a second. The essential argument here is not changed, and that tweet is essentially in line with what I'm saying.
So you're saying that Finn is not a cross-dresser?
Could you let me finish? The essential problem,
Oh, God.
whether or not he's a cross-dresser is, saying he's not a cross-dresser, by the way, I assume the sentiment behind that is that what he's doing is essentially appealing to the transphobic sensibilities of the average person and furthering transphobic tropes for content. That's not what cross-dressers do. Cross-dressers dress in gender non-conforming ways and play with gender because they are expressing themselves. They are not trying to grow their platform at the expense of more marginalized people, right? Just to sort of say, you're trying to police people's
these are
presentation is incredibly bad faith.
Please.
Well,
Also, that's a distinction without a difference. If you are a... Okay, so I want to ask the question. If you're Finn, assuming Finn's, if we're establishing Finn isn't a crossdresser, and you have a crossdresser, and both of them are streamers, and both of them crossdress on stream, where is the distinction of that hurting marginalized people? Like, again, Polly really has only one debate gear. It serves her well in the genocide debate with Lonerbox and Will, but it's woefully misplaced here. And in other conversations he's had with her lefties, absolutely true. The utter smugness from Polly is barely coherent sentences is wild. Absolutely. No. And again, her argument is incoherent. It leads to so many bizarre outcomes. Like, to me, this is, by going by Polly's argument, you have to bite the bullet on a whole bunch of arguments that don't make sense. You're essentially saying that trans misogyny can't hurt non-binary people who are femme presenting. It can't hurt femboys. And the reality is it does, because the same undercurrents that try to frame trans women as predators are put on them as well, either as predators or deviants or whatever. Like, it is bizarre.
Completely different arguments you're sort of smashing together.
Well, no, that's what you're doing. How
am I doing that?
Well, you're having a difficult time trying to explain why furthering transphobic tropes is not that bad, and the only thing you're saying is I disagree and you can't prove that. Which is wrong, and you should never force some.
No, what I think is that you're trying to say that no,
are somehow harmful to them.
What you're trying to do is pretend that trans people are somehow the arbiters of gender nonconformity when other people can express gender nonconformity however they like.
No, that's a straw man. Like, trans people are the most able to detect and are the most likely to fall victim to the furtherance of transphobic tropes that others use to further whatever interests they have.
No, you're not even responding to what I'm saying.
No.
Also, that's not a straw man.
Well, I mean, you're trying to straw man me, and you're getting frustrated that I'm not falling for the straw man. I get that.
I don't even think you know what straw man means. Like, I was also in high school debate. It's fine.
Sure. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, I'm not sure where to go with this because I feel like I might, I might be being owned in the marketplace of ideas by the high school debate lord here. But like, again, the fact remains that.
Did you just get mad because Keffels was demonstrably correct?
Yeah.
What?
When members of the trans community have a valid criticism here about a non-trans content creator who has made their fucking entire platform from day one, essentially, doing transphobic type trap content and the like, saying, look, I think you are for your own interests furthering the very kind of tropes and very kind of beliefs that are harmful to people like me. Like, it is super disappointing that some of the larger trans content creators, which I hasten to add are much smaller than the trans quote unquote content creator who Finn is, are completely unwilling to hear that this critique. It's super disappointing. And instead, like, you're just straw manning me and saying something that I'm.
You still don't know what a straw man means. Also, I really dislike this appeal to emotion she's doing, where, like, she keeps saying disappointed. I don't give a fuck if you're disappointed in me at all. Like, can I be really honest? Like, unless you're someone that I deeply care about, like, if Zena was disappointed in something I had done, I would be affected by that because I care about
would
Zena.
Cry.
There probably would be some crying and some sniffling. But the idea, I never thought a trans woman could be a Karen until I heard Polly. True. But, like, the thing is that, like, I'm so disappointed on this. That is not an argument. That's just an appeal to emotion. You're so disappointed in us. Okay? And? That's not an argument. There's no argument being made here. It's just constantly circling around the unproven premise that Finn is doing trap content and that somehow Finn is, by definition, doing harm because he does the aforementioned unproven trap content. By the way, the progress bar neon cat that I have, it's a extension. Everyone should have it. It's adorable.
Mod said, completely out of the context of what that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, your community seems to really have an issue with gender nonconforming people. You can choose to do something about that or not.
Saying that. No, hold on.
Lying? I have the receipt right here. It's just like, here's your mod.
Okay, all right.
Here's
so
your
like,
mod saying this.
You're literally straw manning that. Like, you're like, one of your mods, Polly, says this, and I'm going to interpret this way, and I'm going to ignore everything you said.
I mean, you were in the same conversation. You could have told your mod not to do that.
Jesus. Okay, all right. So I need to answer for every straw man interpretation that you come up with about somebody.
How is that a straw man interpretation? That's one of your moderators.
You are just coming up with another way to silence criticism at this point. Like, you're
silence
not going to say,
no.
Just jealous.
The majority of this conversation.
When you come up with a good argument that the other person can't meet, you're silencing criticism. Good to know.
Oh no, we're Polly's just running off the rails. It's just off the rails entirely.
Well, and it's so freaking weird because like it's entirely based on this like. Yeah, Aztec has a really great point. She really is playing the victim RGR style. Like, people aren't listening or considering my position. Yeah, because it's based on the premise that if you were listening to me and you actually understood my position, you would agree with me. But the difference is we are listening to you. We understand your position. It's just wrong. Because it leads to harm of non-binary and gender non-conforming people. Sorry, I like femboys. They're fun. To say that they're doing harm to the trans community, I don't give a fuck if cis people don't get it. That's their job to learn. There's this continued thing of like, well, Finn's not a trans woman, so it's not okay. But again, this ignores so many different identities, and there's this appeal to like what normal people think. I don't give a fuck what normal people think. The point is to have education. The point is to have outreach, to make it so people understand. They don't need to understand every intricacy of the queer community. I don't expect them to. Like, this is really, again, it's incoherent argumentation.
Terrible.
The majority of this conversation has been me asking you questions and you getting mad at me asking questions.
Well,
true.
I don't think that's an accurate representation of the discussion because
of course your questions, because it makes you look bad.
Don't really follow from the discussion. You just, like. So I ask again. Do you think that I will say this in the most gentle, or I will ask this in the most gentle way that I can.
Is it the same thing about furthering transphobic tropes? Because when I ask about when trans people do the same thing, you say this is fine, but they have more to do with the trans community. They have a higher duty to represent the trans community. So it's weird that you're not holding your own community to the same standard.
Wait a second. Are you saying that that trans people have a higher obligation to like control their potential like furtherance of transphobic tropes than transphobes do that are not in the trans community?
That's not what Kevin said.
Okay, so when you say transphobes, are you talking about Finn? Because that's
I'm just trying to say like what you said is trans people have to behave themselves essentially, and I'm like, wait a second, for what? Wait, trans people have to behave themselves. And like somebody like Finn or whatever, or even a transphobic person can do whatever they want because they're not trans. Like
that's not the argument.
Disease.
That's not the argument. I'm saying that if you're a trans person and you have
let me know. Go ahead.
If you're a trans person and you have a larger platform, you do have an obligation to some extent in order to make sure that you're doing a good enough job representing trans people as a whole. Because like a lot of people are going to see you, and that's going to be the first person they see that's trans.
But that's the essential argument: is the person who doesn't know anything is going to think, because they don't really understand the nuance in the way that you do, or a lot of people do, is that Finn is not actually trans representation. So
no, Finn never tries to.
Hold on, let me finish for fuck's sake. Well, I didn't say as I said. Like it's quite obvious, by the way, that the fact that you can't really conceive of the idea that the average person who comes across Finn's content being 100% clear that this is not sort of trans-related, or at least...
Pluvius in chat said, by Polly's logic, Conyer would have been bad when they were a femboy, but it's good because now they identify as a trans femme non-binary. But that doesn't even include non-binary people. It's just a step up. It's not even the proper thing. Lady Raincloud said, I stand by my statement that Polly has an incredibly toxic and abusive argumentative style. All she does is cackle at you, use words she doesn't know the meaning to, and paint you as evil based purely off agree with me or well, yeah, it's this is what we mean by the puritanical progressive notion, because by definition it is basically conform or it is conform or die, like essentially.
Yeah. Okay, so if you don't agree with me or not, right? If you don't agree with me and that therefore makes you bad, kind of thing. Like, if we ever shorthand and say that, no, like, it's because there's a fucking reason. It's because there's actually been harm demonstrated, right? Like, if somebody believes that, trans people shouldn't be allowed to transition, that's not just a pointless thing. Like, no, that leads to very real direct harm, okay? Like, if you don't agree with that, no, you are You are hurting people. That belief is hurting people, all right?
Thomas in YouTube chat based. Rodrigo said, nah, I would have muted Polly at this point. No one gets the shut the fuck up. Yeah, no, Keffels is being so generous. She's basically trying to rein in somebody who's having a temper tantrum.
I like all of these food suggestions, including the one that says ice cream for Zena to eat or press to their temple.
Both. Let's go.
Trans-tropy-related content that leans heavily into fucking trap discourse and instead saying, you much smaller trans creators need to mind your P's and Q's and don't say anything about Finn because he's not trans?
Why are you being so aggressive towards me? Like, I haven't raised my voice at you once and you're telling me to fuck off and you're yelling at me.
Are you going to answer my question or not?
Wow.
No, I'm just kind of speechless by like this aggression when I thought we could have a civil conversation about this.
Are you going to answer my question or you're not going to answer my question?
Can you repeat the question? Like, I was just kind of shocked ever since that.
All right, so it seems like what you're doing here is you're saying, hey, smaller trans content creators that are harmed by transphobic tropes, make sure you mind your P's and Q's. And Finn, who to the average dumb fuck looks
Okay, I'm going to call it and say that at this point, if you guys really want us to finish watching this, we will. But all this does is keep circling around the drain around the same thing because Keffels just keeps trying to get Polly to actually have something of an argument.
Yeah.
With them ending on a very, like, uncomfortable, like, I guess I'll talk to you later. It doesn't go anywhere. So if you guys really want to do it, we can do it. But I'm of the opinion that, like, oh, I've been streaming your stream. Oh, thank you, Keffels. Holy shit.
Oh.
That's super cool.
Oh. We were like...
Streamception.
We were also like, we should probably hurry up so we can go talk to Keffels now or at some point and still eat dinner.
But, like, if we really need to watch this, that's fine. But, like, I want to be really clear. Like, this is brain melting. It brained my... Yeah, a skeleton in chat. Keffels was saying this conversation, fucking true.
Oh, absolutely. Be patient here.
No, that's what I've also heard, is that Finn, during the Finn Polly discussion, basically, like, completely backed up on it. I've heard a couple different reports, and none of them make Polly look good. It's just more pain and suffering, and Keffels trying to break through the wall of nonsense. It is true. Keffels was, in fact, saint-like in her ability to not just hang up the phone when she got yelled at. Like, because I would have just done that. Full stop.
It's true.
Here's the arguments, guys. Like, we talked about this in the video where we kind of connected the two different masculine discourses. Mm-hmm. And the issue is that it really comes down to a very simple thing. One, we're right. But also, Keffels is right. Because Keffels basically made all the same arguments we did, which is, by definition, Finn is not doing harm. Mm-hmm. No one has shown me anywhere that there's harm done. There is this vague pointing at harm. And I am really uncomfortable with this type of behavior because I see the right do it. When the right actually decides to stop taking everything as offense and actually try to claim there's harm being done to men or men are being feminized or whatever weird conspiracy theory they're doing at the moment, what ends up happening is that they sort of do this thing where they vaguely gesture at the harm, but they don't actually do it. Like, when they talk about immigrants, they talk about, like, immigrants coming here, and they talk about all these bad things they supposedly do. But once you tear down those arguments, there's still this vague pointing at harm that's not really being done. In fact, we know from the one, we know they follow laws better, and two, the economy shows that they help. Like,
well,
it doesn't make sense.
And the thing I want to add into is, like, okay, let's say there is harm. For an example, if there was harm, the next step is going, okay, what level of response is needed in this situation, right? And the way that Polly goes is massive and huge, and just constant call-outs and arguing, right? When really, even if there was something, maybe just talking to the person first would be closer to where I think we would start at anyway, so, like, none of this really makes sense to me. But again, I still don't see the harm, and no, Finn is in contact with the trans people. Like, Finn does interact with people. We know that. Like, Finn's got a community of trans people, and other streamers have joined in on projects. Mm-hmm. We just saw that in our last stream, which is super based.
Yeah, I guess I'll finish off my thoughts on this in just saying that, like, again, offense versus harm is is still the system we use for this. You have to show me how there's harm being done. The point of being a leftist, the point of being on the left is we are trying to fight systemic harm, unfair hierarchies. We are trying to make it so things are, by definition, better for everyone. That everyone includes men, and that includes gender nonconforming people. Like that's just that this is nearly axiomatic. Like, so I guess my thought on this is that we have to just allow people to be as they are. If we see harm, then call them out. But otherwise, this is nonsense.
Call them out in a reasonable fashion compared
Oh,
to,
did you
like,
find the video you wanted to show for the
I
end?
did. All right. I just need some cuteness at the end, okay?
All right, let me get this cued.
Christy, I think, posted this in our server. Somebody found it for us. And it just makes me happy. Also, I really, really want the bunny ears in the back.
Yeah, the cutest frickin' interaction of all time. We just got our one of our friends to give us this. This is a good place to start to end things. Let's watch the cutest interaction of all time. How's that sound?
Your whole room is a living trans flag.
Huh.
That's a big shark back there, too, I think.
I just like the color scheme. It's not a cope, right? It's just, look, okay, blue and pink look pretty together, and walls happen to be white. It wasn't on purpose. I had the blue things for fucking Minecraft. Damn, what the for orange one? I like the. I went with the. Shut up! I'm not an egg. I went with the. I'm not an egg.
Again, the only thing I can be mad at Finn for is being British and because she's prettier than me.
Can I have purple bunny ears for my chair?
We should look into that, yes.
That would be so. I mean, because like, my headset has them, to go with my purple chair. But like, if I could just have bunny ears that just always live on my chair.
All right, I think we're gonna try. Yeah, it went Don Vito there for a minute. That very Don Vito moment. That's true. All right, well, I guess we're gonna see if we can't meet up with Keffels. So yeah, I guess we will see you guys in the next one. All right.
All right. Love you all.
Love you all. See you in the next segment. Bye.
Bye.
If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, consider donating to us. You can support us on our website, transgirltherapist.org. You can also help us on our Patreon, link below, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.